Hi, and welcome back to the channel. In today's Foxhole tutorial, we'll build your very first facility step by step together from start to finish. If you're interested in learning what facilities are, how they work, and how to make them, then this video was made for you. I'd like to put a brief disclaimer before we get started. The goal of this is to show you what everything does, not to show the best design for a facility. There's so many variants and maxing efficiency layouts. You can really do the research on your own. My objective is to show you the basics and help you start out. So let's begin. To start, we're going to need coal. Unlike other structures, facilities can only be built on top of foundations, which require gravel. By refining coal, we can get the gravel we need. So let's head to the nearest coal field and begin to dig. Gravel is quite expensive. The ratio is 5 coal to every 1 gravel. So this means even a basic facility is probably going to need 3 to 4 full truckloads of coal. Now that our order of gravel is complete, we have to find a resource field to build on. There's so many facility variants: petrol refineries, ammunition factories, construction material facilities, upgrade centers, etc. Today, we're going to make a simple construction material, also known as CMAT, an upgrade pad combo facility. So let's make sure we have what we need. We're going to need a construction vehicle, a truck of BMATs, and a truck of all of our gravel from the refinery. Now we're good to go. Let's begin. Laying out your facility first is essential. You'll want to place large 2x2 foundations whenever possible, because the gravel cost of such blueprints is the cheapest relative to its size. Additionally, foundations consume 3 times as much MSUPs as other structures do, so we don't want to have unnecessary structures. Our first group will house the materials facility, while our second group will house the power plant. All facilities require power. A lack of sufficient wattage results in what's called a failed facility. Make sure to check the power requirements of each desired factory. I'm going to highlight the borders of the power plant to make sure it'll fit, getting as close to the edge of the foundation as possible. You can see that we'll need a CV to build any large structure. Next to it, we're going to place a liquid transfer station. This object allows fuel to be stored for the entire facility, as well as supplying both diesel and petrol to our power plant. Take a look at the orientation. The yellow arrow indicates inflow and outflow. Only the arrow pointing outwards will send fuel from the structure to our power plant. This is where we're going to want to place our pipes later on. The design has enough space, so I think I'm good to build. 200 BMATs will allow us to build our first central power plant. I now want to do the same thing over here. A materials factory is the first and most basic type of facility structure. This turns scrap into construction materials. CMATs allow us to make anything that comes later down the line. I want you to notice the orange fuel cell. This shows the direction of where pipes will connect. On the other side of the blueprint is the wire connection. This is where we attach cables. If we go back to the power plant, we can see that this side of the plant has the transmission line access. If we go to the lightning icon in the build menu, we can click on the cable icon and it'll show us a yellow icon of where our cables can attach. However, in order to do this, we'll need to build some power poles to connect to the materials facility. These are quite cheap at only 25 BMATs, but it is important to know that each power pole can only have 4 cable attachments. The power plant can only be attached to 1 pole. With our layout complete, let's finish the blueprints. To add the cables, simply drag the top of a pole and click on each end. I should mention that cables can sometimes be obstructed by trees, such as seen here. Accidents do happen, so I recommend being decently far away from trees when designing. Okay, perfect. Our build is done. Let's open the menu of the power plant. For now, we can only produce 5 megawatts of energy with supplied diesel. So let's go make a fuel truck at the garage and head over to the refinery. After maxing out my container at 35 canisters, we'll head back to the facility. By clicking on the power plant's refueling button, it'll draw diesel directly from the truck. We can see it filling up the bottom right meter like so. Finally, our factory has power. If we open its menu, we now have some options. For 2 megawatts of power, we can get 1 CMAT for every 10 scrap. Click the icons to set resources, and when the factory registers the minimum amount, it'll start producing on its own. We can also see some upgrade options. The first option is a metal press, which will convert petrol to triple our CMAT production. Meanwhile, the second option is a forge, which will convert scrap to assembly materials for vehicle upgrades. We'll end up making both in this video, but we first want the metal press. Load up as much scrap as you can and begin production. While we wait on our CMATs, I want to discuss harvesters. Harvesters are really unique. They automatically produce resources from node fields, allowing you to collect them from their inventory as long as the node count stays above 25. They're quite expensive at 150 CMATs per harvester, but it's really worth the cost. For the sake of this video, we're only going to build one. However, before we place it down, we need to make sure we connect it to a rail line. Facilities thrive when connected to rails. Small cars can collect resources and transfer between buildings. Rails can be built both on and off foundations, so we're going to choose the latter option. A rail's length, I should mention, does not affect the cost, so always use as few rails as possible. I'm going to first focus on the turn, as this really will make or break the location of the harvester. Use the directions below to change the height or curvature of the rail. After a little tinkering, the rail blueprint is complete, so I can now finalize the position of the liquid transfer station, and we can be done with the entirety of our facility's layout. As you can see, in its basic form, CMAT production is very slow. But off screen, I've upgraded our materials facility to the metal press that we were discussing earlier. We can now make 3 times as many CMATs. We just need petrol. Petrol is a vital resource, and being too far away from a refinery can render a facility useless. This is why, ideally, the best facilities are made in hexes that share all resources within the same hex. Arriving back to our facility, do the same as we did with our power plant and refuel the factory with our truck. We can now switch the queue type, but to do this, you must retrieve and cancel all active queues as I'm doing here. Again, this is worth the shift to triple our production. Great. Let's let the factory do its thing and start working on our pipes. Pipes are a large item, so we can only equip and place one at a time. Located in the build menu, we can drag and click where we want our pipe to connect. The pipe will automatically curve for you. Let's place one directly here and leave some room for the second to connect to the plant. Pipes can curve, but not very well, so try to stay as straight as possible. These will allow petrol to flow freely into the power plant, and as we can see in the upgrade menu, a petrol power plant will cost us 100 CMATs, but provide us a whopping 12 megawatts of power. Our harvester will also need petrol to run. As you can see, petrol will be a problem for this facility. I'll place some in the inventory so you can see how the harvester works. With an inventory of 2,500, we no longer need to harvest scrap by hand. We can simply collect from the machine. Once again, some time has passed, and we've collected 100 CMATs for our power plant. Same as with the factory, let's click the upgrade option with the CMATs in our player inventory to modify the structure. Automatically, the pipes are directing petrol to the power plant, and we can see the bar fill up on the bottom right. The facility is running on its own now, well, almost at least. One of our last steps is to build our rail cars. I made another material facility off to the side, and I'm going to be upgrading it to the forge that we were talking about earlier. The forge creates assembly materials, but these will require some resources we don't have yet. We're going to need coke. To get coke, let's grab coal yet again, but this time we'll be putting it in a coal liquefier. Fortunately, someone has already made a liquefier at a nearby coal facility. Let's look at the math. For every 200 coal, we can receive 180 coke. If we want to make our whole train, we'll need 3,000 coke to make 40 assembly materials type 1. These queues do take quite a bit, so I prefer to multitask. Additionally, I recommend bringing a few hundred coal back to our own facility while you're at it, as our train will need the coal as a fuel source to move. If we look at an assembly pad real quickly, we can do a quick check and see that a rail mineseeker costs 10 assembly 1 mats and 20 assembly 2 mats. Our raw resources carts are called rail trucks. If we look at both of these, we can determine how many of each material type we'll need. Set up the first queue for assembly material 1. Remember, you're going to need 40 total. While the assembly materials 1 cook, I recommend going for petroleum and filling up the liquid transfer station. This is because assembly material 2 costs 50 liters of petrol, or 1 can of petrol, each time. So we're going to need a lot of excess petrol. On the topic of liquid transfer stations, if you ever notice pipes experiencing problems, try hitting the drain pipes option. This will reset the flow. When type 1 is finished, start type 2. You'll need to periodically refill the factory's petrol from our liquid transfer storage, as mentioned before. And once time has passed, I'm now ready to create our carts. Making carts is not like other upgrades. We don't need a base model. As long as the pad has power and the resources, we can click the cart icon and it'll begin construction. The engine takes 15 minutes to produce, but once it's finished, it cannot be driven off the pad. We'll need to package the cart and use a crane to lift the engine off the pad. You can either carry it back to the facility by driving it via the crane, or you can place it onto a flatbed if you have to go a long distance. Once you're next to your rail line, you'll want to use a crane yet again to lower the cart directly onto the rails. And just like that, it's ready for use. Also, remember the coal we stored earlier? Grab a full stack and drop it in the engine's inventory. Now we can drive it. Notice the white arrows indicate possible directions of travel. It's pretty cool, right? Let's repeat the steps for the other 2 resource carts. Once they're all placed, I want you to drive the engine back and use Shift E to couple the carts together. This way, they all follow the engine. Congrats! Your first facility is complete. We can drive the rail cart and pick up scrap from the harvester, and then offload it into the factory to produce C-mats. We can then use the C-mats to make vehicle upgrades for our fellow wardens. You now have the basic knowledge to go further into facility logistics and test your own design layouts. I want to thank you for watching and hope you found this informative. I wish my best to you and your Logi endeavors.